Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Edge Malaysia Property Management Virtual Talk 2024 from Hero to Zero, buying ill-designed strata commercial property. Controversial. We are coming to you live actually from Common Ground in Kuala Lumpur, and we would like to introduce our speakers who are also members of the judging panel of the Edge Malaysia Best Managed and Sustainable Property Awards. They are Mr. Chris Tan, who's founder and managing partner of Che Associates. They are Mr. Anthony Lee T, accredited architect, building inspector and trainer at the Architect Centre, Sdn Bhd. Yang berbahagia Dato' An Kee Tong, president of REDA Malaysia. Also introducing Ms. Au Fung Yee, chief judge of the Edge Malaysia Best Managed and Sustainable Property Awards and editor emeritus of the Edge Malaysia. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Jackie Chan, member of the judging panel of the Edge Malaysia Best Managed and Sustainable Property Awards and editor of City and Country, the Edge Malaysia. So, ladies and gentlemen, in light actually of the recent surge in reported COVID-19 cases over the past few weeks, since actually towards the end of the year, we have decided to have the property management talk in a virtual format as a precautionary measure for your safety and ours. Fortunately, this adjustment allows us to accommodate a larger audience than originally anticipated. We definitely appreciate your enthusiastic response and giving up your Friday morning for us, and thank you so much for your understanding. In the discussion today, our esteemed panel of speakers will offer their perspectives on prevalent issues in property management, addressing both legal considerations and significance of effective property management in safeguarding and enhancing property value, because we're all about value these days. This discussion today will also aim to shed some light on the submission process for the Edge Malaysia Best Managed and Sustainable Property Awards for 2024. And just one other sort of reminder before we begin, please be informed that today's presentation slides will not be made available online, so get your cameras out. As we commence today's program, please allow me to invite the editor of City and Country, the Edge Malaysia, Ms. Jackie Chan, to present the opening note for the forum.
Hello, good morning everyone. Welcome to the Edge Malaysia Property Management Virtual Talk. This talk aims to shed light on the significance of property maintenance and its far-reaching impact. Beyond the obvious upkeep of its physical space, it plays an important role in enhancing the overall value of a property. Effective maintenance isn't just about fixing things. It is an investment that pays dividends for the building, the owner, and the tenant. Speaking of value creation, we'll explore how proficient property maintenance contributes to the well-being of the building itself, elevates the satisfaction of the owner, and ensure a comfortable and safe environment for tenants. Our discussion will navigate through the various aspects of property maintenance, encompassing both the tangible and intangible elements. Importantly, the purpose of today's virtual talk is to share valuable insights. By the end of our time together, I hope you gain a deeper understanding of how strategic and consistent property maintenance can be a game changer. We would like to extend our appreciation to Nippon Paint, our main partner, for consistently supporting us in promoting excellence in property management throughout the years. And to all of you here this morning, thank you for being a part of this conversation. Here's to an insightful and productive session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chan. Ladies and gentlemen, before we head into today's presentations, if you have any questions that you would like the speaker to address, kindly scan the QR code that you can see. I think it's right there. Yes, that's it. QR code displayed on the screen to submit your questions. We will try to address as many of your questions as possible during the Q&A session following the presentation. And without further ado, let us begin with our first speaker of the day. He is the founder and managing director of Che Associates. For the last 20 years, he has served as a practicing lawyer and established Che Associates in 2003. He is also a regular guest speaker for corporate, academic, and public events in Malaysia. And I've actually moderated quite a few events with him, and he's always Very enlightening to listen to. And he's also a guest commentator on English and Chinese radio and TV stations, and a frequent contributor of articles to local and overseas media publications, especially on the topic of real estate. Speaking on a legal nightmare, please welcome Mr. Chris Tan.
Right, good morning everyone. Welcome to day one of the Age Management Virtual Talk 2024. Of course, today's theme is called From Hero to Zero, Buying Ill-Designed Strata Commercial Property. So I'm here to present your legal nightmare today. So for all intents and purposes, we're trying to examine how your dream have evolved. All right? So without further ado, let's jump into our slide. Now, before I start, I just want to highlight to you that very importantly, I am a practicing lawyer in the Peninsula Malaysia side. We do have similar regime in terms of the strata title and strata management regulation in Sabah and Sarawak as well. But there will be some little exception, but most of the time it's the same. So you can make the similar reference accordingly. Now let's start by examining the title of today. So what is commercial property? So as far as we're concerned, when you say commercial property, the first thing that in our minds is to look at the land title, and from there look at the permitted use of the land, underlying land and the property. So that's very important. So how do you justify, how do you then make sure that this is actually commercial? Well, look at the land use for a start. Generally, anything that is beyond residential, for all intents and purposes, can be considered as commercial, right? Unless specifically provided otherwise. What does it mean? It means that a specific type of commercial activities only. Then again, it's very restrictive. Looking at the document of title will tell you all the story. That's why when you purchase and acquire any property, for that matter, a land search in relation to the usage and the permitted boundary of whatever that is very useful. So nonetheless, residential usage is always permitted under commercial usage as well. That's why you can see a lot of mixed-use integrated development that's built on strata format. Most of the time, we have multiple elements in there, and the underlying title is most often commercial. Notwithstanding, you do have a residential element on it, right? So valuation generally is also higher for commercial property. For example, all the land taxes, your quick grant assessment and all that for the value that's assigned to a commercial property. And of course, there are also higher utility charges, water and electricity as well. So in line with the theme today, for the talks that we're sharing right now, for all intents and purposes, we are talking about value creation, value preservation, as well as value enhancement. Therefore, value is very important. Let's jump in from that angle, right? So what's strata? So for all intents and purposes, strata is what we call a regulated community. What do you mean by regulated community? It means that when you are part of a strata development, if you are owner or even if you are just a tenant for that matter, you have another set of rules that is regulating you in the way that you use the property. Hence, you have things like the house rule, the bylaws, etc. that is actually in place to regulate everyone's behavior and conduct and the enjoyment of the property, or more specifically, and the enjoyment of the common property, right? So at the end of the day, we have to look at it as far as the regulated community is concerned. We're talking about regulated maintenance. That's important. That's interest. That is a very interesting feature of a strata development, whereby maintenance is being regulated. That's very important because you build in the service, you build in the regulatory checking for the compliance to ensure that the building is performed in a tip-top condition all the time, right? For all intents and purposes. At the end of the day, you have to understand this maintenance is for life. The life here, what we're trying to say is actually the lifetime of the building, all right, or the strata development. Of course, it also leverage on, very interestingly, owner's contribution, right? It's not a question about just you bought it and everything is taken care of, but you have to participate as well in time, effort, and money in general meetings. For example, in the determination of service charge and sinking fund, right? So that's strata. Property ownership equipped with service mandated by law. That's another way you look at it. Or another way I'm putting it for you is like the ownership come with a club membership, whereby all the other facilities are also provided to you at a cost shared by everyone in the strata development. So for all intents and purposes, we also want to say that the ownership of this parcel, right? As this membership is where it's conferred to you by virtue of you being part and parcel of the management corporation ultimately, and also to some extent, if there is limited common property being created, then of course the subsidiary MC. So they are physically boundary, they are usage boundary. That's where we have to be very aware of. What it means is that while we know where exactly is the unit or the parcel that is owned by me, where is our car park, our accessory parcel that is assigned to us, and it's also very important what you can do with it. That's the key driver as to the sophistication in a commercial mixed-use integrated development, right? So it is generally strata subdivision of a building instead of subdivision of a land, right? Think the entire strata area as a building, and then you cut it off piece by piece, and then still it is all part and parcel of the same underlying master title. So what are the type of commercial property that you can find on a strata format, right? So for all intent and purposes, these days is quite common. We would have a mixed-use development. Typically, we have office, retail lot, service apartment. And these days, we can even imagine there will be hotel, education institution to the even medical institution, things like that to be around. So the shop lot, to the industrial, to even strata warehouses these days are very popular. And also things that always capture our imagination in terms of this wording like Soho and SOFO, things like that, small office, home office. So these are the type of strata commercial property that you can find in the market today. So what are the format of strata commercial property? Just now are the types. It's very important for you to also understand that, other than this, stratified is also telling us how to exactly cut the title. So when I mention about this, it's like, for example, you can have a strata title for unit to unit. That's within our common comprehension of what a strata title property is all about. But it can also be floor by floor, right? It can also be block by block, for example, sitting in a strata development. It can also be identified build-up areas of the strata area to say that this is actually part of strata titles ownership. And of course, it can be also just a plain land parcel within a strata area. So for all intent and purposes, these are the format available. So as of now, you should gather that as far as strata commercial property, the way of sophistication is up to everyone's imagination, of course, within the law. So strata commercial property is always regarded as a hero because they have a chance to do the magic on themselves. They have a superpower to transform or mutanize one way or another, right? So let's put it this way. Why are they a hero? Let's talk about it. Number one is because it's always affordable, right? Because everything that we talk about commercial property, it's always been the case that it's going to be expensive. It's normally not for anyone. Commercial property is not for home usage. Therefore, people in business tend to be more sophisticated and therefore the price should be higher. However, having a strata commercial property, we have this strategy called the right sizing. For example, we can take care of the SME or the smaller enterprises to even the GLC, the big companies, right? Things like that. For all intent and purposes, then it make it affordable, and the right sizing is important because it's affordable to the range of requirement that you want, right? That's number one. Number two, of course, is dynamic because it leverage between the different elements in the mix. So beyond just pure residential as well as access to infrastructure. That's why you have in the market things like the TOD, transport-oriented development, that's leveraging on the public infrastructure for better connectivity. Right? The last one is called self-sufficiency. Why is it a hero? Because once we move this, I always call a strata mixed-use development is actually a township on its own. Why do I say that? Because as far as you're concerned, you have all the service available. You can get everything done within the strata commercial development most of the time. So the aim and leveraging on the service, the regulated maintenance, and the different elements. So hence the dynamics. So this is the hero that we try to create. So what are the so-called zero in this sense? Why do they suddenly also come with a cost? Like I said, all the superheroes are actually a tragic person one way or another, right? They are victim of their circumstances. So let's look at it. So what are the zero part of a strata commercial property? Number one, First of all, it's going to be high maintenance in the long run because of the fact that by general, for commercial property, we want it to be a high traffic thing. Unlike a residential for the quiet enjoyment because we need the traffic to be in. So accelerated wear and tear, high traffic, because of that, therefore high maintenance. Of course, the permitted usage under the commercial development is also very dynamic. As far as this is concerned, the expectation management as well as the different weightage factor in the communal share unit in a different permitted usage under the commercial land use, for example. So because of all that, you would then have more chance of dispute, right? And also more chance of managing expectation that is differ within people of different usage. For example, if you are the office owner as compared to the retail lot owner, I'm sure there are different expectations in this strata property, stratified development, right? The last one is obviously the idea of self-management. Now, again, at the end of the day, if you buy into a strata property, you always remember you're actually buying into the community. At the end of the day, it is then given back to you to manage. There's no more such thing as me against the government, for example, me against the management, right? So for all intents and purposes, you are actually part of the management at the end of the day because the aim of the strata property or management regime in Malaysia today are all leveraging on the fact that it's ultimately owner management, right? Owner's management. So let's look at ill design. When you say ill design, at the end of the day, we have to ask a question, ill design for what? What is the purpose of this design, right? At the end of the day, who designed? So we should say that before the conception of the entire strata development is obviously designed by the property developers. And for all intents and purposes, in this design stage, what exactly you design your integrated property for the objective that you want. For example, generally we say that obviously this is a business property development, therefore you design to sell to property to buyers and also investors in relation to that. So when you design things to sell, there's a lot of gimmick or there's a lot of frill that's incorporated as well, right? Are you also designed just to meet the eye aesthetically pleasing, you know, whether it come at a cost, right? Normally, for example, if you want to look good, you have to invest on the makeups, for example, right? And also design actually is it also designed to facilitate community building? You have to understand, at the end of the day, a strata commercial property development is also a community, right? And also, are we looking at design to create further value appreciation, looking at the integration and interaction, both the hard and soft part of the community, as well as enable property management on the long run, for example? So are we looking at the end, is there a plan for a limited common property to be created whereby there will be self-management within the development itself, therefore with multiple sub-management corporation created despite, in addition to the main management corporation. And of course, whether it is also designed to adapt to new circumstances. This is very important because throughout the last 10 years or even last 20 years, for all intents and purposes, the strata regime in Malaysia is still evolving and it's not far from settled. So for all intents and purposes, is the strata commercial development that you're looking at designed to adapt, right, for these new and evolving circumstances? So what is the legal nightmare that we're trying to highlight to you as far as this is concerned? So, for all intents and purposes, there is an inadequacy of the existing statute regime and the dynamic of judicial interpretation now. I'll give you two facts. Number one, Strata Title Act 1985, Strata Management Act 2013, both due for review, again, to catch up with the evolving property development trend, particularly mixed-use development and the blurring of defined permitted usage today. Let's start. Number one, 2013, I'm already involved in the review process. Then again, of course, change of government, change of minister, obviously will then hinder the progress of this review. But then, as it is, I would fairly comment that it's actually due for a review as to how to catch up with new circumstances. What are the new circumstances? For example, COVID, lockdown. For example, things like work from home. Today, flexible working is already a norm in today's context. So, working from home, then the next question is that, is it permitted really Does it actually justify working from home from a residential context, for example? And of course, they are the disruptor in terms of like Airbnb operations and all that. In a commercial stratified property, is it permissible? Things like that, right? So these are all questions that yet to be adequately addressed. And the strata title issuance and also the formation of the MC, that's very important to note that because there is a requirement at the end of the day, we're looking at owners management through the management corporation. So because of that, we are now looking at having a formation of MC from day one as soon as possible. Now the problem with that is again the timing. Because if we're looking at the title to be delivered together with the vacant possession, whereby the developer will hand over to the owners after its completions, right? And if the title is there, then again accelerate the process of forming the MC. Then the next question is that whether the owner are readily being educated or equipped with the right knowledge of the building to manage it effectively. So that's also part of the thing that we need to address, right? So the timing is very important. So continuously, there is this concept of JMB that we probably want to ask, right? At the end of the day, is it still relevant, right? Because of things. Let's look at the next point that I want to highlight to you. The relevance of strata management regulation and statutory prescribed bylaw on non-residential strata development. For those of you who tune in today, may I encourage you just to pick up a copy of the third schedule of the Strata Management Act to read what exactly is the prescribed bylaw. And after you read it, I'm sure you agree with me, it does not apply to a stratified commercial development. Why? Because most of the things inside there are talking about residential property, right? So for all intended purposes, Strata Property Management Act, as also as Strata Title Act, in terms of revision in the last review, are actually done together with the Housing Development Act. So for all intended purposes, when you put it all together, the tendency is that it is very key towards the residential strata development and not commercial. So to me, that is a gap that we need to address urgently, right? So as far as we're concerned, other than that, we have also looked at the relevance of joint management body, JMB, right? What is joint management body? Joint management body simply means that it is an entity to manage the common property of the strata development, right? For all intents and purposes, between the owners as well as the developer, between the owners as well as the developer. So because of that, this is what I call the transitional period where the original creator of the development will then pass on all the knowledge of the building to the building owner. This is what we call the handheld period, right? So during this period, it's not for anything but rather to transfer the knowledge, right, in terms of compliance and etc. However, this is created back in the act that is then in 2008 called the BCPA, or the Building Common Property Management and Maintenance Act of 2008, right? And it's continued to be adopted by the review in the strata regime in the 2013 one. So as far as this is concerned, it is brought forward. However, the mechanism and the expectation today in relation to the issuance of strata title upon the delivery of vacant possession only means one thing. In future, if this is effectively complied, there will not be such entity called JMB anymore. So without this transition, would the owners who suddenly land with this hot potato of managing the entire common property know what to do, right? And what is the role of the housing developer who originally designed the DNA of these unique products in the first place, correct? So again, we are looking at how to address that. And the gap, it also includes things like these days, hot in the discussion in market, obviously, is the issue of urban regeneration, urban renewal. Of course, they got to do with strata, multiple ownership, how to address that. At the end of the day, also we want to say that the judicial interpretation of all the strata-related law, it is still not unsettled, right? A lot of issues are being challenged. A lot of people are looking at the higher apex cost in making decision, but then it takes the process. The judicial system have many avenues to challenge, right? So again, we need certainty. So therefore, to address all this, a new regulation needs to be in place to plug all the gaps and potholes along the way, right? So after you hear me all that, you have enjoyed the nightmare. Now I'm just saying, are you still buying? The answer is of course. You know why? Because that is the way forward, right? Let's put it this way. We all want convenience. We all want services. We want regular maintenance. The regulated maintenance part is very important. I will highlight to you, if you have a statutory regulated maintenance, the aim of it is actually consistent with the theme of today's sharing, which is how do you preserve and enhance the values, right? If you don't maintain anything, if you do nothing, right, really nothing will happen. Appreciation by inflation, yes, but they also got to do with condition of the property that you maintain it to a certain level, right? So understanding the nightmare is an empowerment for you to manage your dream. So we always say that, if you are like me growing up with those Hong Kong TVB series, right, you always know that one of the things that we want to do as a rich person is so that you can buy some property and then you can collect rent every month, right? That's how you live your retirement, supposedly, right? But then at the end of the day, it was a dream. But then, let's put it this way, it's never so passive. So at the end of the day, you must know how to manage, and there must be an expectation that maintenance and regular upgrade or replacement of certain things, or even having a tracking of what needs to be done with your property from time to time is the best way to preserve your investment. Therefore, I'm highlighting to you, time, effort, and money is still required to continue, enhance, and preserve the value of your strata commercial property. So it's all about management, right? So today we call about property management virtual talk, right? So at the end of the day, what is property management? Is it really just managing the property? I think we can look at management from these few angles. Number one, yes, obviously the subject property, the state, the condition, the ease of maintenance. That's something that a lot of people are neglecting. So when I say ease of maintenance, what it actually means is like how easy for us to maintain. For example, correct? So we have this double floor space, triple ceiling, high ceiling. The next thing is that you need to know how to clean it. For example, things like that. For example, the ease of maintenance should be part of your consideration, because if it's hard to maintain, it also means higher cost, right? Next thing, what would be your expectation? You must also manage your own expectation in relation to this. You have to understand that, what kind of property are you looking for? What kind of profile of the people there, what kind of management standard can you expect, right? And also the service level and the affordability, right? We have to keep it real. For example, you don't expect 5-star maintenance quality, right, for an affordable housing maybe, right? So I'm just saying to you, set that expectation, your expectation in the buying very importantly. And of course, the stakeholder, you must know what is the composition of the strata community. Let's put it this way. Remember, at the end of the day, it's owner managed. Who is the people in the community? What's at stake for them? For example, in a mixed-use strata development, for example, everyone have different priority, yes or not? So let's say you are the residential element of a mixed-use integrated strata, correct? You probably want quiet enjoyment. But then the more that is directly that where your building is actually built on, underneath, would want a high traffic. They want people to come, yes or not? So can you imagine how you balance this? Therefore, you must know it from day one, what was the expectation, including the financial feasibility. Financial feasibility, right? Simple things like all the facility that you originally buy into. Do you think that you can actually, how frequent do you swim in the swimming pool? How frequent that you actually go to the gym? That you actually paid every month or even every year through the sinking fund to maintain? So that's the question you need to answer. So what do I do now? Do I still buy or do I not buy, right? Buy what? What am we buying to, right? Let's look at this. Making informed decision by being diligent and learn more about the strata property, that's very important. For example, you must understand the rate of charges. For example, if you're buying a secondary market, you have to look at what are the rate of charges over the years. Any changes, right? Is it on an increasing trend or is it on a decreasing trend? What are the reasons? Find out more before you commit your decision to invest or to buy. Look at the minutes of recent general meetings to identify any issue of concern, because that's where all these things will be flushed out, right? Profile of the property manager, very important, right? Any changes of the property manager, right? Any reason for changing it? What are the things? So you can gather those information rather easily available from even the general meetings and whatnot. If not, ask from the seller of the property. You know why? Because the seller of property, if they are not diligent with it, then you can form your own conclusion whether you want to buy or not. All right. Of course, profile of the property developer is important. So what are they do? What are their continued involvement with the strata commercial property that they have developed? Right. Of course, the last one is the criteria of the award won by the property. Now, that's very important. There's a difference between award awarded to the property developer or award to the property itself, right? So look at the one that award to the property. For example, we're talking about the Best Managed and Sustainable Property Award that we are talking that we are organizing here. For all intent and purposes, this criteria will give you a way to look at how do we judge a good buy or a bad buy. Is it something that meet your expectation? So I encourage you to go through the criteria, and from there, based on that, you would then make your decision. Remember, it's the award won by the property. That's important. Okay. So what's my friendly reminder to you at the end of the day? Very simple. Number one is that you have to understand one thing. Your cost of buying a strata property includes its statutory regulated and ongoing maintenance and timely upkeep. So you probably say, okay, so it means what? It means you have to cost in. It's not just the absolutely price tag, correct? But you have to look at it. Besides that, there is still the need to pay maintenance. A lot of people ask me, how long should I pay for maintenance? The simple answer is for life. What do you mean by for life? For life of you as the owner of the property until you sell it. Otherwise, it will always need to be cost in. Similarly, even if you rent it out for a tenant and all that, these things should be cost in as well, because it's part and parcel of a strata community living, right? Number two, you are not only just buying into a property, but also a membership to the strata community. All right, why do I say that? Because at the end of the day, I always tell people that if you buy a strata property, I always say that you actually buy a property with a club membership, right? With all the facilities that's available to you for use, correct? And it's important. I think the soft part of this is more important. It's not about how many karaoke room they have, how many mahjong room they have, how many gym they have, how sophisticated of the meeting hall and the equipments that they're supplying, but rather, who are your neighbors? More than anything, what would be their interests? Are you aligned with their values in relation to the usage of your property? So all this you must bear in mind for all intent and purpose before you commit to a decision to acquire your strata commercial property. So that's all I have for you today. You're welcome to scan the QR code and ask me any question. I hope to answer that as soon. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Actually, we do have a couple of questions. As we can see on the Slido, they're up there, but if you actually have a question you want to upvote, please do. The first one is, are bylaws and the house rules the same thing? Some have a view that the two terms are actually quite different. What say you?
Okay, the simple thing is this. I would say that bylaw are house rule. I would say that the bylaw, there's two types of bylaws. All right, number one, there's a bylaw that's prescribed by the law, which means that it's already part of the strata management regime. It's part of the schedule annexed to the law. So as far as there's one set of law that's already available. Then there's such thing called the additional bylaw. What do you mean by additional bylaw? Additional bylaw is actually those laws that is subsequently made in addition to the prescribed bylaw and not in conflict with the prescribed bylaw, and that's unique to your strata development. And most of the time, I call the house rule that's in place for all intent and purposes, if it is not adopted by the general meeting, I call them the premature bylaw, right? So let's say if this house rule is determined by the developer as part of your deed of mutual governance or your documentation for you to acquire property, there's a need to really adopt it into the general meeting and make it additional bylaw. The reason why it needs to be bylaw because it has a legal status in law and is very much enforceable under the strata regime in this country.
There's another question I saw about how the SMA requires 25% of the owners to have MOT to form the management committee. How do owners involve building management prior to the formation of that, in your experience?
Okay, let's put it this way. SMA do require 25% of the owners to form the MC, right? before the MC, the Management Corporation, to be formed. That's why currently at this moment we do have a regime called Joint Management Body, right, whereby it is jointly managed by the developers and the owners prior to the formation of the MC, prior to the first AGM of the Management Corporation. That's where the opportunity go in, right? Now, in a unique situation, which is still rare today, although it should be a norm later, whereby if vacant possession come with stated, with strata property being issued, so for all intent and purposes, if that is the case, then obviously developer will manage until the first AGM is called, first AGM of the Management Corporation. So my answer to you is that depending on which situation, the first is to join the Joint Management Body and learn the trade from the developer. Number two is obviously there's nothing stopping you to observe and to also take keen interest in the developer management side, especially if the developer in managing the strata development prior to the formation of the MC engage a professional property manager. You can then ask all the questions, get all the info. Yes, the answer is that there is no statutory requirement in relation of your involvement, but there's always room for representation.
There's also one question there about rate of charges. How do you check on that? Is the building MO actually allowed to reveal that to non-owners?
Okay, let's put it this way. They cannot reveal it to non-owner. I suppose the answer of this, the question is coming from the context is that, let's say I want to buy, how do I know the rate of charges, yes or not? I think from the angle, and because you are not a non-owner, you go to the management office, they will not entertain you, right? Obviously, you need to buy it from someone, correct? That will be the owner of the property. So that owner of property can help you to get this info. For example, including the minutes of the general meetings, things like that that's helpful for your deliberation. You know why? If the seller is not even helpful in relation to this, then you can make your conclusion whether you want to buy or not, right? That would be my answer.
And then we have one final one, I think, before we move on. Basically, in the land title, it says it's not mentioned commercial or residential, only building usage. Where do you actually check where it's permitted?
Okay, so I suppose that actually for all intent and purposes, all land title would have a permitted usage. So perhaps the question that you can specifically zoom in, you're referring to the strata title. Because the strata title do not provide the fact of land usage, that's correct. It is because strata title is issuance pursuant to a master title. What do you mean by master title? The underlying master title, whereby there's a piece of land where the entire strata development is erected and constructed on top of this piece of land. So therefore, whatever strata title that's actually issued pursuant to the master title is still regulated by the land use, eventually by the master title. So the simple answer to you is that if you're giving a strata title, it doesn't tell you what is the land use, then you might want to check the underlying master title. Get it from the seller. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for that. Thanks for that, Chris. Thanks so much for the insights. And thank you very much for everybody sending in their questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then welcome, by the way, if you're joining us virtually, thank you very much for spending your Friday morning with us. And we're moving on to our next speaker this morning. He brings with him more than 30 years of experience in the construction industry. He's actually now Malaysian Institute of Architects, or PAM Honorary Secretary for 2023-2024, chairs the Professional Practice Committee and Disciplinary Committee as well. He is also the Group Chief, Operating Officer and Transformation Officer at Bina Puri Holdings. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite Mr. Anthony Lee T, who's an accredited architect, building inspector, and trainer at the Architects Centre. And once again, a gentle reminder, if you have any questions for Mr. Lee, please scan the QR code that you see in the corner, and that is that you can see flashed on screen. You can type in your questions, and he will try and address them at the end of his session. His presentation today, Maintenance Horror by Mr. Anthony Lee T. It's not a horror story, is it, Anthony? But anyways, over to you.
Thank you, Nadia. Now, is your property leaking? Never gets fixed. Lift breakdown, never told why it keeps getting broken down. The property manager that gives you the run around. And the security guards that gives you the creeps. And you got cigarette butts in your lobbies and your staircases, uncollected rubbish. And what's the smell coming from that swimming pool? Cockroaches, rats, everywhere. Why does my toilet stink even though I don't use it? The mold in the gym. My basement is dark and damp. And everywhere you see signs, sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry this, sorry that, ma'am. You're spending more time at the property manager's office lodging complaints than enjoying the place that you have bought. Your dream home has now become a nightmare. Are you aware, are you at that stage now where you are so exasperated that experts and lawyers are involved? You are told that defects after DLP are no longer the responsibilities of certain parties. Are you aware what latent defects are or what it means? Now, welcome to the horror show. That you are not alone, but we hope more and more of you will be able to arm yourself with knowledge, and hopefully at the end of these 2 days, you can pick up some useful tips about what to do, what to avoid, who you can see, and take important steps, positive steps, to avoid these issues and wake up from your nightmare. With that, welcome to my maintenance horror shows. Sadly, I've been doing this for too many years, but unfortunately, the issues of Malaysian building faults continue to plague us, continue to give us nightmares. And this is a list that I have gathered over the last 15 years. And they keep on increasing. They do not become lesser, in fact. Why is this so when the faults happen over and over again? Now, this is a quote that I always go back to, where we have investors coming into Malaysia, many of them previously under the Malaysia My Second Home, where the H has become, sadly, their second hell, where they have seen poor standards in our construction, although our product is not, okay? Now, many of these cases, unfortunately, are now being heard in the courts. Is your property one of those? Now, I'm going to take you through a series of slides, some of which I believe you have seen, some of it which I've shared before in the many forums that I have shared. I tell the same story. Unfortunately, the story keeps unfolding. I'm sure you're quite familiar with leaks coming down from the top down. Okay, this is a picture of a lift motor room. I think all of the condominiums and the high-rise buildings, whether you are living in a commercial or you have bought into a commercial properties or in an apartment, you find that your lifts break down. But often, most of us don't get into the lift motor rooms to find out actually it's a drop of water that keeps dropping into the equipment, and it makes the equipment go old faster. So simple things, but unfortunately, the repairs are not done properly. We have crashing ceilings. I'm sure you guys have seen, especially in our climate today. Strong winds are bringing down ceilings. This is a very unsafe situation, and I think this is very sobering. Now, I'm going to ask you all to take a simple poll, if the poll is ready. What do you think these faults are with the ceilings that are coming down like that? Do you think it's attributed to design or workmanship, or it's just maintenance? So if there is a poll going on, please put your number down. We'll see at the end of my talk today who thinks that this is a design issue, or is it something to do with workmanship, or is it maintenance? But the sobering fact is that ceilings are coming down, and you could be, unfortunately, below these ceilings one of these days. Now look at this situation here. This is, again, very common in the properties that we have, where you get cables and wirings mixed around with pipes and so forth. And people have to work in these rooms, and commercial buildings today, sadly, are in this state of condition. You can't even identify the services within that, let alone try to find the faults or repair them. So in this case here, is it to do with design, workmanship, or maintenance? So there's 2 slides that I put forward, and I look forward to your views. There's no right or wrong, and I urge you to take a stab at it. Now, moving forward, the last 30 years, we have moved at an incredible speed from very simple shop lots, walk-up shop lots, to strata, multi-use commercial buildings. As you can see here, we see this on our streets all over the place. And lately, you know, one of the largest projects that I think most of us are familiar with, it's also a mixed commercial residential strata. So this is where we are today, mixed-use strata, residential and commercial put together. Many of them are phased, meaning that they don't get built all in one go. They get built over many years. Sometimes you move in first in the first block when it's completed. Sometimes you move in and somebody else is building on top of you. So therein lies a lot of challenges if you live or you're expecting to live in an area where it's a mixed commercial development, or you work in a mixed commercial development with other residential people. Multiple blocks, and today we even have transport-orientated developments. So you have underground infrastructure, done line. I think Chris did cover the range of commercial mixed strata use. So it's pretty much like our nasi kandar. A lot of things get mixed together, and every one of these have to then be put together. But unfortunately, not all of the mixed strata end up as delicious as our nasi kandar. Unfortunately, it's quite the opposite. You know, because when you put all of these people together like nasi kandar in an AGM, you find that you're going to get a mix of different people with different requirements and different objectives. You can see here some properties, they have malls on the ground floor, and then the retail owners, they buy into some parts of it, and then you have Soho upstairs with some of the blocks. You have the developers who haven't sold some of the units, including some of the condo residential owners. So they all come together in an AGM. And guess what? Everybody has disparate views about how the property should be run. And these are kisah benar, because these are the real meetings that are being held. And they cannot align about money to be spent, about what to do when issues crop up. And moving forward, the kisah benar, the true reality of it is that the consumer and investor patterns have changed. You can see that today the density and layout has gone up. High-rise density is incredible. You can see that, you know, there are a large use of glass, gas, water, electricity. Everything comes together and is meshed together. Hence, the management and the maintenance become a new challenge. So it's no longer just managing shop houses or simple offices. It becomes a management of a grouping of different types of strata properties. Now, a typical mixed strata development, I extracted some numbers from here, of a resi commercial mixed development of approximately 1,500 units. Actually has over 2,000 pieces of installation. You can see here, I've listed them down, from lifts to the relays to the gensets and so forth. Now, someone has to run this. Someone has to maintain it to be in good tip-top working order, because a lot of these are related to your building safety and building functionality and performance. If you're running an office or if you own an office, you would want to make sure that all of these are in good working order. But who does this? Who's responsible for this? You know, many of the projects that we've been, they don't even have an idea how many pieces of installation are involved and that are put together to make sure that these properties are functional properly. Now, we call this PPM, or Planned Preventive Maintenance. So there are people who are experts, property managers who have the technology and they have the systems and the technical know-how and the technical know whom, when, and what to do. Unfortunately, the real situation is a wait-and-see attitude. Basically, do nothing until the equipment breaks down. And this is really the nightmare that you are facing if you own or run into a property of this nature. Now, what makes it tick? Let's be frank, at the end of the day, it's just money. You need money to operate, to run and maintain this equipment. You need money to hire the professionals and the people to operate this equipment. So that when you own and operate and use these buildings, they are going to be safe and they are going to be functional. So a very simple comparison here would be the collection service charges, plus whatever income is generated, times by the owners with sinking fund for all the repairs and replacements, and also some left aside for a rainy day. Now, if you don't have enough of this money, you find that your operating and your capex will be in deficit, and your building will ultimately break down very, very quickly and become unsafe. So financial sustainability is actually the key. I call this the safe or sorry fund, because if you have money, your buildings will remain safe. If you don't have money, it's a sorry signs everywhere. Okay? So very important note that I need to emphasize. Because the equipment in your property do not last forever. Nothing lasts forever. Some last longer, some last shorter. So I've done a very simple chart here. I've shared many times with the industry that a typical lifespan of a building, 40 to 50 years old, will require many repaintings over 10 years. Many waterproofing needs to be fixed. The doors, the windows, the equipment needs to be replaced over time. And this needs money. And if you equate the inflationary cost, the safe and sorry sinking fund for aging issues will continue to rise. So these are the facts that you will continue to pay. As what Chris, my good friend, said, you will have to pay for life. Now, what are these equipment? Let me run through with you the kind of dangers that if you don't maintain this equipment properly, that becomes a nightmare horror maintenance story. Fire safety is probably the most important thing on everybody's mind. But unfortunately, there are many properties today that we've seen even during our judging and also during the work that I do that have got faulty detection equipment. And these are very big equipment. You know, these equipment have been put in place and some of them are totally even shut off. So how do you know when you don't hire the right people to flag up this information to you? You could be actually operating or owning a property that have got faulty firefighting equipment. Fire escapes, everybody know, in the event of a fire, you come down the staircases. So you have an escape staircase, and you have fire doors. But what we see today are people using the staircases for storage. And so there's no escape. Now, these are things that we see commonly in the kind of properties that we see that we do the inspections. And these are some of the real Kesa Bena stories, where some of the commercial buildings actually put padlocks on the last escape of the fire doors. And they put a sign and they tell you that the doors will be locked between certain times. So they're trying to tell you that the fire is not going to occur on those times. Right? So you go figure out. And here, even on the inside, they took away the handle so that you cannot get out and the people cannot get in as well. So for the sake of security, safety is compromised. So these are deadly fire traps. You have to be careful with these things in the properties. And here, even some of the extinguishment equipment like hose reels and the hydrants are clearly damaged and they require replacements. So in the event of a fire, you have no means of detection, you have no means of escape, or you have no means of extinguishment. The three most important attributes in fire safety of your buildings. Now I'm going to move on to the other topic, which is actually the topic that is sadly becoming a systemic issue in Malaysia, is water leaks. Okay, so this is a very typical mixed strata property. Okay, it has commercial down floor, then you have the multi-level parking, and then upstairs you have some apartments and so forth. So swimming pools, and there could even be a basement parking. So I'm just going to take you through. Okay, these are the interfloor wet areas, the bathrooms. So leaks occurs from bathrooms. So I'm sure you know, bathrooms leak one on top of another. The other one would be from the podium, it leaks down to the car park. Then also the areas where the apron slab leaks down to the basement. Then you got the construction joints, the swimming pool leaks, and all the M&E rooms as well. So basically in a property like that, you can see that there's so many areas that require attention, that require people to manage this kind of issues. But don't you say, isn't this building supposed to have waterproofing? Hence, my earlier question, if in the event there is a leak in the building, is it attributed to design? Is it attributed to workmanship or maintenance? Well, we'll see the poll and then we'll answer that during the panel session. Now, water and electricity are good friends if you want to have a war. Okay, because you can get a fire and you can get electrocution. So this, unfortunately, is what we see in many, many properties. Okay, and here I have some infrared photograph, infrared imaging to show you that above that swimming pool in that diagram that I showed you, you can see the water coming down from swimming pools above, affecting the accessory parcels below. And these ones are also another more serious one where water is actually leaking into a large switch room. You know, you can see that they've even put tarpaulin sheets just to make sure that water don't get into those equipment. Now, one drop of water that goes into this equipment could spark an explosion. And then the whole building will then be powered off for months, literally, just to get some of the replacement equipment. Now, we also see a lot of concrete flat roofs today in Malaysia. Due to the premium, the space that we need, you find that many flat roofs today are in very sad, dilapidated state of condition. Now, to repair this kind of situations, you need to have enough money in your sinking fund. As I mentioned just now, your safe or sorry fund. Now, if you don't fix this properly, you find that the leaks will keep coming down, and the owner directly below there will always be facing leaks from his roof. Now, the only way for one to fix is really to rip out everything. These are some pictures I'm going to share with you where swimming pools that are leaking will need to be ripped out completely. You can see the tiles there are being ripped out. They have to start all over again. Now, these are expensive, and these are very disruptive as well. This is another swimming pool that needed to be ripped out and waterproofing redone again. So these are very clear examples of the nightmare that you would face as far as the horror stories. And then if you don't fix them, eventually, because you have a saltwater pool above, many swimming pools today are saltwater, you find that the salt will come down and it will start corroding the steel. Eventually, you're going to get structural problems in the building, and that becomes even a more expensive repair. Now, I'm going to move on to another area, is actually design of maintainability. Pipes. You know, all of us now, we eat out, and then we go back home and do our business, right? So when we go back to do our business, we go back to our apartments and we are living in a high-rise and we flush the toilet. Where does it go down? It goes down through the pipes. Now, those pipes, unfortunately, are often concealed in the walls of your property. You can see here some of the properties have inspected, the pipes have burst. And guess what comes out when the pipes burst? And sometimes they burst inside your bedroom. And this is actually one of the properties that we've inspected, that the pipes, the sewer line, actually takes a bend in this chap's master room. And because it's very noisy every time it flushes, he felt that the best option was to put a pillow and wrap it around it. So this is actually a Kesabana picture that we took. It's kind of funny, right? But the pillow, instead of him lying down, he wraps it around his the sewer pipe above his bedroom. Now, what happens to those pipes if it gets broken inside your apartment? Those watery things coming out from the switches and coming out from the walls is, you know what, right? It was from the nasi kandar that you had earlier. So this is the reality of our services today, okay? The sewage pipes. Now, as it comes down, sometimes it makes it down to the car park, and then from the car park you can see we have infrared here to detect all the blue color stuff there. That just tells you that these are all the clogged pipes, just like the arteries when you have, you know, cholesterol. So we also have equipment to check whether you have these issues in your pipes. So when you have these issues in your pipes happen, you're going to get long-term issues where eventually, if you work or you live in strata properties of this nature, where it's not built properly, you find that you're going to get blockage. And you're going to have to do the hard job of chopping it up and replacing it and cleaning it by hand. Now, these are more simple things. When you do renovation in your houses, when the kitchen guy comes in and they do renovation to your bathrooms, and then they put little pipes at the bottom of your sink and so forth. And now, if you don't do it properly and you don't put the proper traps down, you're going to get these stuffs coming up. Okay? Simple things. So people complain, why is there a smell in my house when I don't use it? Why is the smell coming up from the toilets? These are the kind of issues that you need people that help you to manage the property to look into it and help you. Now, I'm going to go through with you exactly what you should do if you want to have a horror story in your property. That is, if you're going to have to buy into a property or if you're going to do a property, first of all, you don't do any planning when it comes to constructing it or it comes to designing it. Just use unsuitable materials, shoddy workmanship, and you don't comply to all the regulations, okay? And you focus on features, you focus on impractical features, you focus on aesthetics over practicality, you focus on sales over safety. So you put on the hat and you can see what is the result of it. Then eventually, you don't hire a property manager. And then the collections that come in lack transparency or governance. Okay? And then finally, when the MC is finally formed, it's late, or the JMC is formed, it's late, and you have many unresolved and common property problems that remain in the building. So you now inherit a whole bunch of defects. And you also have incomplete handover accounts, so your books never match, you won't have enough money, as I mentioned earlier. And then you got many of the owners who are uncommitted. They don't put time and effort, knowing that a strata property requires the owners to come in and get involved. Okay? And then you have unscrupulous property managers and their teams, so resulting in very dirty, badly managed property. They wait till it breaks down. Finally, the collections gets low, you will have deficit, things don't get fixed. Finally, you can't afford to fix important safety items like the firefighting equipment, pumps, and so forth. The building then descends into a situation where it is now unsafe. What's the result? Unhappy strata owners and community. Dilapidated, rundown buildings. Now, if one wants to become from zero to hero, this is the recipe. It's exactly the opposite of what I just showed just now. Okay? You got to design with materials, workmanship, and compliances. Think about the facilities that you're putting and giving to people. Are they practical? And if you're going to look for property, are you buying into a property that has got too many features and frivolous features? Do they have a proper professional property manager? Okay? Are the collection of service charges on time? Implementation of house rules, management and maintenance procedures, formation of JMB, closing out all of the common property defects. And then putting into place PPM, maintenance, making the property safe, secure, and have procedures for crisis management. Healthy collections, 100%. Everybody pays. Enough money for sinking fund, enough money for operating. And finally, as a result of all of this formula, you have a harmonious strata community with lots of activities, engagement, and finally, you get a better yield. So I think the formula is there. It's just that it takes a lot of effort and commitment from everybody, getting it right from the beginning. So these are the many articles and seminars that we've been through about the attention it requires, because not every property is the same. Some you are building against a slope, so you need to give more attention to the slopes and to the drainage. Some of the areas use a lot of glass. Some of the buildings have a lot of lifts that have issues. Now, if you go to a property and you go into the property management office and you see the drawings and the documents in this order, you know that everything else is likely going to be well managed. Unfortunately, this is a rarity. So, future-proof design, if you want to be a hero, okay, or if you want to go down to zero, you make sure that you avoid all of these things here. You just make sure that management, maintenance, and financial sustainability becomes your number one priority. Because regardless of the location, if you ignore these things, it will eventually descend into an expensive maintenance horror show. So I'm going to end by asking you and inviting you for the 2024 Best Managed Sustainable and Property Awards. Is your property deserving of this award? Come in and let us audit your property and your submission. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Anthony. I was right. You did sufficiently terrify me. Anyways, we're moving on to some of our questions, at least for today. You can see them on screen as well, but I'll read them out as well. There is one that says, do you agree that some buildings are poorly designed and make it difficult for property managers to access and manage? We were actually talking about this earlier, weren't we? About like certain design choices. What do you feel?
Oh, absolutely. You have to design with the end in mind. I mean, I like to take this example where if you bought a car and you know when you collect your car, it's new, you drive it for a month and you have to send it for service, and you get a call from the dealer and says, "Look, excuse me, but we're going to have to cut parts of the engine away to change the spark plugs." I mean, this is what's happening in the properties that we have today. They don't design it with the end in mind. That the life cycle and the maintenance forms a large part of the lifespan of the building. The design, construction takes up maybe 4 or 5 years. But the next 40, 50 years, somebody has to go in there, fix the pipes, clean the drains, attend to all the issues that I've highlighted in the building. Sadly, as I think we've heard this many times, we have 5-star buildings, but we got a unfortunately a third world mentality as far as maintenance and management is concerned.
There is a question here, I think that a lot of people will probably know, it just came in. But if there are cases where parts of the building need to be completely hacked and redesigned, pillow notwithstanding, who bears the cost?
Well, it depends when. If it happens early on and if you can catch it early, so I guess the developer might consider fixing it. But if it's something that is caught much later, you'll find that it will end up coming from the coffers of the owners, likely from whatever money that they don't have.
Okay. Then there's this question here as well. Who regulates property managers? What can owners do if they find wrongdoings in property managers? Actually, that's a good question. Is there legal pursuits or is there a statute
Well, I'm
or
gonna
something?
maybe can we take that in the Nadia? Maybe I can take that during the panel discussion.
Yeah, okay, no problem. We'll keep that, what do you call it? We'll keep a pin in that for later as well.
Because we have a lawyer in the room.
Ah, yes. Okay, so the next one is they mentioned that maybe laymen may not know what is needed to be checked on, like fire extinguisher, fire exit door. What can someone do? What I assume they're asking for, like, is there a easy checklist out there? Is what resources are available for, let's say, first-time homeowners?
Well, fire safety in a building comprises of 2 parts: the passive safety and the active safety. The passive means things that are built in, like the staircases, the walls that prevent the fire from going through, and the fire doors and so forth. The active systems would be like the extinguishers, the detectors, and the control panels. Now, these 2 areas are designed actually by architects and engineers. So when one wants to go in there and do an audit to see whether they are functioning, a normal layperson may not be able to understand this. Hence, it's always good to get the professionals to come in to give you an assessment about the condition of your property.
Okay, that's a good. I think that's a good note to kind of end it on. We don't have. I think we'll save more time for the panel discussion
Okay.
as well. So thanks for that,
Okay.
Anthony, quite a lot. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your questions. We will proceed to the next segment of the forum in a bit. Thanks again, Anthony. And of course, for those who actually have questions, we've got a couple of these coming in. For those who want to know about the awards themselves and the regulations, you can email your questions to bmspa@bizedge.com. If you have any questions about the awards themselves, that is where you go to. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to take a very, very short break. Time for you to maybe go get a coffee, stretch your legs a bit. But if you're enjoying this session so far, please join us again tomorrow via that exact same link for another insightful discussion on how to destroy your housing property value. Very, very riveting, actually. We will resume in 5 minutes, after which we'll commence with the Fireside chat. But in the meantime, please feel free to scan the QR code on that screen and share any questions you would like the panel to actually address. We have that question, right, about who manages the property owners. Your input will add actually a perfect touch to the Fireside chat later. Please stretch your legs. We'll see you back here in about 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Edge Malaysia Property Management Virtual Talk 2024 from Hero to Zero, buying ill-designed strata commercial property. I hope you enjoyed your 5-minute break. And without further ado, you can see in front of you, please join me in welcoming the distinguished members of the judging panel of the Edge Malaysia Best Managed and Sustainable Property Awards. Yang berbahagia Dato' N.K. Tong, President of REDA Malaysia, and coming back on your screens are distinguished speakers Chris and Anthony, accompanied by the moderator for this session, Ms. Alfung Yee, Chief Judge of the Edge Malaysia Best Managed and Sustainable Property Awards, and also she's Editor Emeritus of the Edge Malaysia. The topic today, controversial as all of them are, costly to judge a book by its cover. Ms. Au, over to you.
Hello and good morning. Welcome to this session of Fireside Chat. I am Fung Yee, your moderator. And of course, with me today are three gentlemen whose profile you have heard already. But just in case you missed it, let me just do a very, very quick introduction. To my right is Dato' N.K. Tong. Can we show Dato' N.K. on the screen? Yes, Dato' N.K. Tong. N.K. is the president of REDA, which is Real Estate and Housing Developers Association Malaysia. And on NK's right is architect Anthony Liti. Can we show architect Anthony? Yeah, architect Anthony Liti. Anthony wears many hats. In fact, he is the honorary secretary of Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia, which is PAM, and he is also a building inspector with Architect Centre, which is a subsidiary of PAM. And guess what? He is also a contractor. Yes. And to my far right, we have Chris Tan, the expert on strata laws. Chris is the founder and managing partner of Tor Associates. Right. Let's just dive in right now. We all know the maxim, never judge a book by its cover. Let's just apply that to property investment. Before you buy a property, do you just look at the aesthetics of the building? Do you actually know what's going on behind those lovely painted walls? Are the organs of this building in healthy condition? Are the artilleries, like what Anthony has mentioned before, working in tip-top condition? Dato', you have visited a lot of those buildings during the course of the judging of the awards. Tell us what you have seen.
Yeah, sure. I think you started off by asking the right question. Do you judge the book by its cover? Unfortunately, unlike books, we buy many books through our lifetime. When it comes to properties, we only get, most of us get the opportunity to buy one or two. And so it's not such a frequent purchase, maybe even less frequent than cars. And so that's one issue. We may or may not have the experience to do purchase often. Secondly, it can be quite emotional. We look at something very nice, interiors, showrooms, but like a car analogy, it's good to look under the hood to actually see what's going on. And whether it's commercial or residential, but here today our focus is on commercial, could be for office use, for service apartments, etc. There are many telltale signs if you're looking at properties in the secondary market. For example, aside from just what you see is what you get, actually, perhaps what you see is what you don't get. It's good, and we have, as judges, learned from that to look into the M&E. I think that's Anthony's specialty. And also even something as simple as the MC accounts, the management corporation accounts, to see how healthy is the operations, how healthy is the sinking fund. Just as, when we buy a car, we test drive it, but we don't ask necessarily for the maintenance record. And there are some reputable car companies where they go back to the same workshop. There's a maintenance record. You can see the history of this car, what issues it's given. I think you can learn a lot also from looking at past AGM minutes, whether the residents are happy. It's all the tea leaves and the hints that you can get before you make a purchase. And if I may just add, I suspect a lot of people spend more time researching handphones or fridges, which are much more affordable, than buying property, which could sometimes be hundreds of times more expensive.
Anthony, in the course of your inspection as an inspector with Architect Center, what are the most horrific, things that you've ever seen in those areas that people normally don't even visit? I'm sure that a lot of residents don't even know that these areas within the property exist. Share with us.
I think one of the most glaring shortcoming I see is that many people who bought into strata properties didn't even know that they are living in the strata property. They still think that they only need to worry about their own private parcel, their car park, and the lift that they catch up and down. So they think that everything else is magically going to run by itself. They might know where the property management office is. They might know where the swimming pool is because they use it. But other than that, I think that alone underlines the main issues is that the residents themselves don't take a part in all of these facilities that it has to be managed and maintained, and it's going to be their responsibility to do it. So having said that, therefore, many of them don't even know that there is such thing as a lift motor room, or there is a pump room, and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. So what we are talking about here is ignorance, lack of awareness. But Chris, based on the kind of visitations that you get from disgruntled residents of strata property, is the awareness in these kind of issues growing?
Yes, I think the simple answer is it's growing, obviously.
More people are getting more knowledgeable.
Correct, but there's still a lot of catching up to do.
Okay.
There's still a lot of gaps and whatnot. They still don't know what exactly they are getting themselves into in the first place. Because I want to say something is that, when we say that doing research and buying whatever, they have to ask yourself, at the end of the day, they thought they bought what they want, right? Without even addressing what they need. That's very important. Because at the end of the day, we take it for granted that because we all live in a house, we all use property as a human, right? We naturally know how to manage a property. That's the biggest myth that you probably want to learn again, especially with today's sophistication.
There's a question for us, Chris. It's interesting. The question is, who regulates property managers?
Okay.
How I read into this question is that, yes, the awareness is there, but the sophistication of the knowledge, is actually very far away. But it's good. I mean, it starts with questioning. Your answer as to who regulates property managers?
Well, as far as Malaysia is concerned, that the property manager is actually a profession. That's required of just like doctors, lawyers, architects, for example. We do have our regulating bodies, and of course the property manager is actually under the regulations of this board called the BOVIAP, basically with extra PM at the back. So if you look at the initial, it means that it's the board of the valuer, appraisals, right, and property agent as well as property manager. So they do subject to this regulation, and their continuing practicing is subject to scrutiny from this angle, yes.
Well, there's actually another part to the question as
Right.
to, what do we do and who can we present, the wrongdoings of property managers? Who do we complain?
Correct. So as far as we're concerned, as far as the strata development is concerned, because property manager do offer services that is non-strata, so we have to get that clear. Of course, if you talk of strata property for all intent and purposes, first of all, the board, obviously, they are there to take the complaint, right? That's the regulating bodies, right? Number two is, of course, if it's a strata development, then we talk about commissioner building, right? And of course, depending on the nature of the wrongdoing, it can also be the local authority, especially if it's a non-compliance thing. So at the end of the day, it varies, but as I said, like it or not, the board is the ultimate body. It's just like the lawyer is ultimate answer to the bar counsel, one way or another. If really there's some disciplinary action, we listen to our professional body. So I would say that will be the ultimate funnel. Yeah.
The board.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. We have actually been talking about buildings that are up and standing. That's why, we can enter the building and then we can look at the, the various aspects of the interior of the building. We can scrutinize them. What what about new buys? Property that are not yet built, right? What is it that, a discerned buyer need to do? Maybe something that NK can enlighten us?
Sure. I think, yeah, you use the right word, discerning buyers. Again, as I said, property purchases can be emotional, so we try and remove ourselves from that. And if you look at commercial properties, for example, in a case of, say, an office development, you can actually look at the size of the project, and you can estimate what is the population of workers that are going to be there, whether it's one worker per 100 or 150 square feet. Of course, things have changed since the pandemic, but then look at the provision of lifts, how many lifts are there, how many stories is the building, and you kind of get a feel for whether the building is adequately serviced by lifts or not, for example. And also, the number of facilities will also add to the running costs. And when a developer proposes this is the service charge, they may hold it for a year, but when the keys are handed over, the MC is formed, it's actually up to the MC then to budget for it. So again, a new buyer should think about that. Yeah. If I could just extend it a little bit, looking beyond the first few years, especially in commercial properties, if you want to retain value as a whole, I mean, like Anthony mentioned just now, most people just look at their four walls and how they get there. But I think for commercial property, you have to look at the common facilities and in particular the outlook of the building as well. So does the foyer, does the drop-off need to be upgraded? A lot of older commercial properties you see today have security turnstiles. So that's been upgraded to be current and competitive with new offerings.
So, in short, correct me if I'm wrong, NK, one need to really scrutinize what is it that the developer is selling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you can't know everything because it's off the plan, but buying from reputable developers does help. And if they are new, I think you just do a little bit more research before you jump in.
If I may
Yep,
just
sure.
interject a little bit in relation to that, I think it's important to also look at the mix and the integration of especially a mixed-use development, because often they use the word integrated. Then the next question is that even for maintenance and management of it, how integrated can that be? Can it be separated easily? For example, is there an intention to separate it later? And like in the presentation by Anthony earlier on, one of the features of today's mixed-use integrated development tend to be in phases. So the next question is that you don't look at your phase alone. You have to look at the other phase. So a lot of time you buy the first phase, then what will be the second phase should be part of your consideration, because ultimately the entire strata development is for its entire development, which include all the remaining phases or future phases yet to be done in the entire land. That's what I call in my presentation, I call it the master title, right? So I think it's important to give consideration to that, because if you buy with your eye open in the sense that knowing that, the subsequent phases will actually disrupt your peaceful enjoyment for the next 10 years because of the future phases, then you better be prepared for it. At least you go with your eye open, right? So I think the integration part is also important, because legally you might want to consider, for example, when you plan the design of these things like a limited common property and a sub-MC and all these things. So if it's too integrated, I'm sorry, although the law or the legal regime allowed you the process to do it, but it's just physically or by design, by default, impossible. The Siamese twins issue,
Sorry, Chris, allow me to just jump in now. When you say too integrated, exactly what are we talking about? What is too integrated?
Proximity, I would say, yeah.
Is it proximity alone?
Yeah.
In my mind, it's not just proximity. It's just like the engine room, the facility, for example, right? If you have one water pump, for example, serving all the different elements, but it is placed, the placement of that thing, for example, is in the residential element. Now think about it. For example, there's some complaint or some issue as a result of the connecting or the service to the retail side. They need to then go in to disturb the service apartment area, for example, for the purpose of maintenance. So all these are consideration, because a well-designed one, for example, if it's 4 separate elements, it's meant for, at the end of the day, 4 limited common property, 4 sub-MC to be formed. For example, that's the intention at the from the start. then it should have 4 separate set of genset, 4 separate set of water pump, so that we can facilitate that. That's why I said, if you design, is it a twin or is it a Siamese twins? 2 integrated means I cannot separate them. Then you have to live with it. Yes.
I want to add a bit more on what Chris is saying on this Siamese twins issues. You see, when a new building gets designed, the efficiency of the design sometimes comes from the consultants as far as the most efficient M&E design. That means something that's the most practical as far as its functionality. But that's only from that filter, from that angle. But if you put in the filter of, say, subsidiary titles, subsidiary strata ownership later, or you tend to split it up, suddenly that criteria has to change in addition to this functionality. And then when you have the phased development, where now you're going to have to do the first phase to go out again. So there's another criteria that comes in. So this is a balancing act between how much one puts in as far as performance from an efficiency point of view versus ownership versus the phasing. Now, this is often not well thought out, and as a result of that, when the intention is all there to say, okay, I'm going to give you the first phase first, you find that suddenly, like as what Chris was saying, the genset's located somewhere else, or the entrance is somewhere else, or some of the other things to do with bomba access is located, somewhere else, and you can't get access into it. Then it's a bit late then to start changing. But if it's in the finished form, where the entire phase is completed, maybe it was fine. You see,
Yeah. I think we are hearing a lot about the DNA of the building. And of course, we are talking about integrated development, which is very, very popular, kind of projects that's out in the market now. Okay, let's put ourselves in the shoes of a consumer. After hearing, what you gentlemen have said that, oh dear, I better walk away. But that's not going to happen because, like it or not, integrated development is here to stay, and there'll be more of them coming on stream, right? So, gentlemen, please help me to unpack, what you have just said, for the consumer. What is it that I need to look out, different phase, different entrance. Hey, what's happening here? We need help, gentlemen.
If I could jump in,
Yeah.
I think Anthony used a great metaphor, Siamese twins of...
No, Chris did.
Oh, Chris did, and I
Okay.
picked it up from you. But it literally is, you're joined at the hip and it can't be separated, right? So the pros and cons. I think integrated, especially for commercial, makes a lot of sense because you want office space, maybe you want some element of residential, retail, all put together. Then the question is, how do we bring it together? And hopefully the developer had designed it with the end in mind so that it's easy for the strata title owners to manage. Having said that, even then, I think the strata title components have to work cohesively with one another. So there have been issues lately in the law, and I'll leave that for Chris to address, whether different components can charge different service charges because they have different needs. And in some circumstances, if it's planned ahead, you can, and if you hadn't, then you can't. But I think it's beneficial that they're able to do that, and they have to work together. So the office block cannot ignore, say, for example, the retail, because that brings in tenants who will want to use the office space because it's convenient for the staff. And also how they're integrated to public transport, and if they're not, or if there are new, say, MRT stations coming up, how can they connect in an easier manner to those transport nodes?
Sorry,
Just need to add into this. If you are, there's nothing wrong with having an integrated development. Let's put it that, because it's convenient. There's a lot of benefit into that. As an owner, of course, you will enjoy for it. But the thing is that I think there's two prongs here. Number one, from the creating or the conception stage and all that, the property developers in coming up with this, right? When they sit down, all the stakeholders to plan a development, right? That's where they normally get the architect in, do the drawing, how aesthetic pleasing and whatnot, how to place all the facility and whatnot. They should actually, in the same meeting, involve experts from property management and property maintenance who come in and say, hey, this one cannot be like that, it's very hard to maintain, it will going to increase costs, or the property management will just say, oh, there will be later dispute between this element and that element and whatnot, and probably even a legal expert like myself to sit in there to tell them that, hey, your title might have an issue, and later when you call for this, there will be an issue in relation to your calling of AGM, forming of MC, things like that. So I think is that as it's getting more sophisticated, right, the property developers who are in charge of the project must be commanding the decision of all this, getting the input of everyone while they put the thing in place. The whole idea is who is everyone, right? And make sure they are at the table when you make that decision. Because I think we cannot run away from integrated, but how do you implement it properly? That's more important.
No, I just want to take the point about, I think we mentioned a few times about planning with the end in mind. Now, integrated developments being phased actually has many ends.
Yep.
There's no one big end, because when you finish the first phase, that's the end for that first phase. You know, so and this is for those that are kind of like building across, say, maybe a wider site. If you have a narrower site, you can see some of the buildings, as far as phases, are stacked one on top of another. You know, where you got a lower portion of the block is completed, it's handed over, and it's then the parts is built in the top. So I think that is very challenging as far as, you know, putting so many people on the table, and it's always a tussle. Okay? It's a balance between efficiency, maximizing your returns, making sure that all the services function separately in those phases and safely. And one other point is that during that point where the first phase is completed, the second phase or the third phase is completed, the collection, the money that you collect, is it sufficient to run it in its incomplete sense when you have only that part? So we've seen those situations where the early people who took possession of the building ended up having difficulties because what was placed in the first phase was costing something that was something for the future. So they end up having to maintain more of the parts of the building.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and a legal fact, just to consider, one single fact to consider for everyone to understand is that actually the current legal regime in regulating development did not actually have phase development in mind. So in their mind, every development is single phase. So as far as strata is concerned, so the joining of the phases is actually, we read in between the line and fill the gap by the lawyer or judicial practitioner more than anything else. So, yeah.
I hear you, gentlemen. You know, the responsibility, a lot of the responsibility is, the onus is on the developer, building with the end in mind, right? But let's just, again, you know, look at it from the consumer's perspective. Who will help me to tick the boxes? What are the boxes that are required to be ticked, especially in integrated development? I am, you know, even more anxious, you know, hearing what Chris said, that the law is not quite there to keep up with, you know, what is unfolding as far as the industry is concerned. So do I buy? And if I do, what are things that I can do to protect my investment?
I think asking the right questions and asking the hard questions.
Sorry, yeah?
Yeah.
Very
Which
good.
questions?
What are the hard
Yes,
questions?
yes.
What are the right
I think first and
questions?
foremost is really, which is often not available, is the entire master plan.
Okay.
And you find that many of the master plans, even with what we've seen, is that they only seems to color, the rendering is only for the blocks that they're selling. And the other blocks in the same master plan seems to be kind of like a grayed out color. So I think that part of it, consumers need to know what is next door, what's coming.
Okay.
You see, I think that's the first question. So,
Okay.
Is it going to be a hotel block next door? Is it going to be, you know, a shopping mall here? You'll be surprised that often they only tend to give you information for what you are interested to see.
Sure.
Yeah. The models that are being built for the entire
Sure.
integrated development may or may not be the final design.
Yeah.
Maybe NK, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, before that, okay. Very good question. So what we are talking about here is not only should you not judge a book by its cover, you should look at the bookshelf.
The
You know
whole
what?
bookshelf.
Yeah,
The
the
whole
whole
bookshelf.
bookshelf, right? Yeah. Very good question. And after that, after knowing, okay, that's a mall coming next to me, and down the road, you know, maybe that's a theater. Ooh, makes me even more excited about the purchase. Right? What about the maintenance point that they need to consider? What would that be? The
Well,
law?
I would say,
The law?
let's put it this way. Since you mentioned that you have to ask the right question, let me address the answer.
Okay.
Well, first of all, there's no simple answer, and there's no single answer too. I think a lot of people are under the misconception that if I have a question, there's definitely an answer. It's very circumstantial. First of all, I want to address the fact that the Strata title regime or the Strata development regime that is currently regulated expect you, right, to declare what are the remaining phase because you expect to also allocate share unit for the undeveloped phase from day one. Otherwise, you can't even start the selling process and whatnot. But then the difficulty is that, although we have defined that there are phase that's allocated in terms of share what they want to do, there can still be other changes that is possible under the law, right? Although you might disclose now, or what if there's a change of plan, but it's within the law, you still can change it if that is the way to do it. Then how do you address those things? So when we talk about the cost of maintenance, whatever that even knowing all the grey out thing and whatnot, sometimes it's still you don't know, correct? At the end of the day. But you have to be prepared to understand that, unless it's meant to be carved out, it's different thing, right? You have to be prepared that there are other things to enhance your value of the property or to impact your existing value, one way or another.
NK?
Yeah. So let's. Okay, I'll take my developer hat off,
Okay.
and I'll look at it from the point of view of a consumer. Okay, and so developers out there, please forgive me, but let's understand that
he's only the president.
investing in property is risky, right? So if we don't want to have that risk, or we want to minimize that risk, but still want enjoyment of the facility, maybe we consider renting instead. But if we are going to invest in a property, then perhaps we can actually follow the majority. If you look every year at the NAPIC numbers, the National Property Information Center, as much as 85% of property transactions are done in the secondary market. That means buyers are buying existing properties. Why? What you see is what you get. Now, even then, when they buy existing properties, they may make mistakes, but that, they go in with their eyes open. If you're buying a property under construction, there's additional risk because you don't know what it looks like when it's finished, whether it's exactly like in the brochures. You don't know whether that there is completion risk also. And then there is operational risk, which I think highlighted by my colleagues here, in terms of is there enough money for the MC to deliver services? Were the services built well enough? But again, if you want to mitigate that risk, buy a completed property. Have a look, this is a pitch for the BMSPA. Have a look at the award winners that come out each year because the team here have actually scrutinized the existing facilities, how they're maintained, and the operations, the collections, everything. And the work is done for the investor, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to pick a point in the risk spectrum of what you want to do or what your objectives are when investing in a property. And what is your alternative in Malaysia? Investing in the stock market. I bet on aggregate, more people have lost more money investing in the stock market than even buying a property that's not fully optimal. But the fact that it's there is still some value. So if you want to enhance your value, maybe think like the people on this panel when we go and look at properties.
NK, thank you for that. Are there any pros then in buying off the plan? Now put on your radar hat.
Well, no, not my radar set, but from a point of a consumer, your returns are commensurate with the risk you're prepared to take.
Okay.
So obviously, if you are one of the 85% in the country that buys a secondary market property, it's already fully priced. But for those who buy off the plan, the benefit perhaps is that there will be price appreciation upon delivery and beyond. So that is one of the pros.
Yes.
And the second pro maybe is that you are getting newer, up-to-date projects, especially in the last 3-4 years with the pandemic. I think now maybe if it's a residential home, you might have a space for work from home, or even in office space, the more what do you call it, shared offices or facilities that will attract staff as well.
Let's take a question. The question is, many developers don't design buildings with the end in mind, and what's REDA's role in it? I just want to rephrase that a little bit, from your perspective, the input that you get.
Yeah.
Are developers, thinking more these days about designing buildings with the end in mind?
Yeah. So I did ask Feng Yi to throw any difficult question at me, so she's doing one. I think let's look at what's REDA's role broadly, and then come back to this question. REDA's role is to encourage our members to build quality, affordable homes and or strata properties and or commercial properties in a timely manner for the benefit of the rakyat. Now, specific to whether these buildings are designed well in mind, we have to leave it to market forces to compete, right? And to one purchaser, what's not a good design may be to another purchaser a good design. So some people say, I don't need so many facilities, I'm paying for it. Another purchaser will say, wow, I do love all these facilities because I can attract more tenants to my building. So it's very subjective, what is good design. As a NGO and an organization for all the major developers. I mean, we have 1,500 developers in our membership, and we do maybe 80% of all development in Peninsular Malaysia. Now, there's still a portion that are not members, and we can't regulate that. But our focus is to make sure that they follow the law. Now, and as Chris said, to some extent, the law is still catching up because there are new. And the law will always play catch-up because there are always new developments that are coming to enhance the value and the lifestyle of the potential investors and the tenants that go in.
Okay, yeah. One of the relatively new development in the market, especially in the commercial space, we're talking about service apartment now, is the advent of Airbnb, short-term stay. Some of the units actually are built for that, in the sense that in terms of security and safety, that's all been taken care of. But on the other hand, we often see units that are vacant, and therefore, owners turn them into Airbnb and, help to offset some of my mortgage payments. What are the issues in terms of, say, like safety? Anthony, this one's for you.
Oh, I'm not going to be very popular about this.
It's
when
okay.
I say, yeah.
Yeah.
I think when you convert a building that's meant for resi into Airbnb, you're basically using it pretty much like a hotel. And the requirements are quite different because of the sleeping risk. You sleep in a building as your home, you find that the fire laws and fire requirements are quite different as opposed to when you sleep in your own home versus you sleep in a building that you're not familiar with. So I think therein lies the issue that when you actually have a building that has got B&B in it, there are requirements in there that you need to comply, where you have now converted into this different use. So I think there has been a very lack of awareness in this situation. And the other one is also, of course, that when you have a B&B and you mix it with other resis who are staying there full time, it's a
big problem.
Yeah, it's a big problem. And so with security and also with maintenance, because once you run a property like that, you find that the wear and tear becomes quite heavy.
NK, do you have anything to add?
No, I think I also concur with Anthony. I mean, if it's purpose-built for Airbnb, that's fine. Probably very clearly marked signage of where the fire escapes are, sprinkler to contain the fires as well. And like Anthony said, because you are transient, so you're not familiar with the layout of the property, it has to be very differently designed to a higher standard than a typical residential project. But I would say at the end of the day, the more properties that we can put into the market, sorry, this sounds like a pitch for developers. No, it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. What I mean is the more real estate we have out there, the more affordable it becomes for everyone. So you might find even rents coming down to compete, right? Or rents going up because Airbnb is doing well. But at the end of the day, and we can't look at KL or part of KL versus elsewhere. We have to look at KL and Malaysia as a whole competing with the rest of the world. And with the AI world that we're in now and the virtual ability, you don't have to be, for example, stationed in Singapore where the real estate is just through the roof, right? I mean, for a foreigner buying property in Singapore, the 30% stamp duty they pay there could buy an equivalent property in KL, just the tax alone. So if we can have enough, what I call infrastructure in terms of property to be able to attract foreign investments, that will give employment opportunities to Malaysians. It's a whole ecosystem. I think real estate is part of the economic growth of the country. And the more affordable, good quality, timely delivered, and in our discussion today, well-run space there is out there, I think the better for the country.
I just want to add on in relation to this, the purpose-built building and then targeting, like for example, even if you do a purpose-built Airbnb for that matter, I always have this question to say, yes, it's purpose-built for a certain purpose, but is the buyer buy for that purpose? That's also an issue. There's no stopping if I like the design of this so-called Airbnb-friendly building or design building, I just want to stay there. There are people who love staying in the hotel, right? You can't stop me to buy a pickup truck as my daily car to commute, right? Not pretending it's not meant for that purpose, for example. So I'm just saying to you is that I think there is also an issue about public education as to what are you buying, and don't complain just because you already told you that this is a like for example, you can't complain the pickup truck is not comfortable at the back seat. For example, you can't lean down and whatnot, but you know full well it's meant to be a commercial vehicle and not your comfortable type of sedan, yeah, for example, in that sense. So I'm just saying that I think the buyer should also bear the responsibility, and rather to just say that, oh, how come I'm not protected? So I think it's important that we should have the informed buyer, even if they say, oh yeah, we don't know what to answer, the tick box and whatnot, right? The question is that, are you willing to take the effort? There are plenty of resources, right? Materials like we publish in The Age and whatnot is very useful from time to time, right? And even video content like this.
Maybe let's spend a little bit more time, to share with our audience on what we have seen on ground during our site visits. And, what are the lessons that we can glean from there? The do's and the don'ts, from different perspectives. Maybe, Chris, you want to start from the legal perspective. Based on what we have seen in the submissions over the years, what are the common anomalies that shouldn't be there, and, how these can be rectified?
I think
this will be Kesa Bena, because these would be the cases that we have seen over the years.
I think the differing in purpose is very obvious sometimes. We have we only go into best managed property, normally the site visit and all this, most of the time is actually when they are completed.
Yes.
Right? So there is an expectation difference. So how do you address that diversion? So what do you do? What do you do about? I think it's very important to invest in the user education, which is like what I've always said. Remember, as a Strata owner, we have a manual, the owner's guidebook that we've jointly published. For example, in relation to that, these things must be there to bring not just the awareness, the knowledge is important. You are buying a different type of property, and therefore you should know how to use it and make the best out of it. In fact, the enjoyment is conditioned to you knowing. If someone that don't know how to ride a bicycle give me the most expensive bike, I will just stare at it. I think it's important. I think the meeting of expectation is very important if I need to point that out. Yeah.
Meeting of expectation and knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Education,
is
right.
Then the user and product match, as in matching them how to do it. Correct?
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes when we talk about questions and, things that people don't know about, they want to find out about Strata, tell us, what is the most simplest thing that, have been asked of you? Simplest. They should know, but they don't know.
Okay, very simple. They'll just say that, oh, why do I need to pay sinking fund?
Okay.
Right? Very simple. Why do I need to pay sinking fund? I know service charge. Okay, fine. That's a simple thing
Yeah.
I can understand. There will be service and whatnot. Right? But so what's sinking fund all about?
Okay.
For example, they don't understand why they need to pay extra into it, right?
Yeah,
So if I pay
yeah.
extra into it, is there interest earned? How do I use it? For example, things like that.
Okay.
It's a very, very basic question that you should know that it comes with this price, and this price tag alone, for example, your price tag is just getting you entry into the product itself, but to maintain the lifestyle is another set of price, right? That price tag include not even that, why do I need to attend AGM, and this is simple thing is that, management is not doing well, not knowing that they are contributing to the management not doing well,
Okay.
simple things.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Basic
Yeah,
fundamental.
Anthony, our experiences on the ground. What are the
Kisabana ones? The happy ones
the
or the-
happy ones and not so happy?
Yeah. Well, a lot of happy ones.
Yeah.
I think all the winners are, some just blow our mind how well they have, had the end in mind. And also not only having the end in mind, but actually executing it, hiring the right people with the right mindsets and having the systems in place. I think I'm always in awe about how much work they put in, especially in meeting the KPIs, in doing all the back end grunt work, managing the cleaners, managing the all the equipment and things like that. Some of the commercial winners that we've seen, right? And I think the quality of the building and how well it is being maintained. Some of the buildings are over 20 years old. It's very impressive. I mean, this is like a world standard of how the systems are put in place. However, on the other end, the not so happy ones is that, when you go into some of these presentations, they throw the bunch of sales brochures to you, as opposed to really telling you what's the back end. And when you finally ask them about the back end, it's like, well, it's not even, in contemplation. So I think that's the disparity that we are seeing in the industry. But on the good news is that I think more and more, and even for us, I get a lot of inquiries, directly to me to say, hey, we want to come in and do this award. And my first question is to them is that, what are your expectations? Why is it that you want to come in? Is there something that, you think that this is important to you? And the answers that come to me, again, it's the same disparity. One thinks that they can increase sales. Yeah. Another one really says, look, we got this amazing system, and we worked so hard to bring the building that wasn't in very good shape to what it is today. So I think the disparity and the difference in expectations are quite glaring.
And Kay, you want to
Yeah,
share?
so, we started off by saying don't judge the book by its cover. But given the experience on this panel, when we walk in, actually we can tell from the cover. Of course, we have to dig a little deeper just to verify that all the outlook actually reflects what is really going on. And I get most excited actually when we visit projects in the 10-year and above category. So this is another pitch for BMSPA. If you have a 10-year or older property, don't despair. There's a category just for that. And it can be very impressive. Some of these properties are actually better run than some of the newly handed over ones that we go visit. And that, I think, really then as we explore more and find out the secret sauce, each one is different, but I think good maintenance mentality, I think a very good working relationship between a management corporation and managing agent, high quality standard operating procedures so that they can actually monitor what's going on. I really am impressed with the quality of management of some of these older projects. Now, of course, it is a self-select group because if they know they're good enough, then they submit. The ones who maybe don't have those things will never come to our table. But again, I encourage even properties 10 years and older to submit for the BMSPA this year.
Got the poll.
Yeah. In a nutshell, when we talk about the well-managed, world-class managed buildings, we are not necessarily looking at the new buildings, right? Even buildings that are like 20 years old, they are really worthy of recognition. Yeah. So
In fact, if I just add on that, I think the industry terms that we use is settlement. You know why? Because you need to let it settle. The building, even if it's new, a lot of time it's not settled. Therefore, we don't know what is the pain point, which part that we need to pay more attention to. Therefore, contrary to everyone's thinking, who already participate in the award, for example, they think that the newer one will have better chance of winning. I actually think that the older one have a better chance of winning is because the building is more settled. Then they know exactly where to allocate their resources to address those pain points and to make sure it's sustainable in that sense.
that is assuming the mindset is correct.
Of course,
Yeah.
and one thing that I think the separate, most of our winner, the one thing that common trait that you can see from all the winner is the sense of ownership. Right? It's not
The
me
pride,
against the others, or me against the world. No, it's me part of the world. Right? We are in the boat together. That's important. Right? For example, now we can see that when we do the older building and whatnot, a lot of happy owners are willingly showing their home to us, although we are not judging their home in that sense, you know. So I think that's important because I think the soft part of it do add to the hard part of the management practice to make it sustainable and whatnot. That will make it, I mean, the more we feel at home, the more ownership we have. So that's why even in our work criteria, we do have allocate certain points in relation to the integration of the community. That's why even in my slide, I said, is it designed for community building? Correct? Are we designed for the interaction or the harmonious living of the entire strata community there, or is it designed to be separate? It's very different. Yeah.
In other words, it's not just about the hardware, right?
Correct. No.
Yeah, the
Definitely.
software,
Yeah.
the human factor is very important.
That's
right?
why I say one of the due diligence that you monitor is actually the profile of the people staying there. If you want to decide whether you should go in or not, right? Because the profile of the people will determine the sense of ownership in relation to that and how sensitivity, what they place their importance in certain thing over the others.
At that point, like what NK has rightly pointed out earlier, there's always this element of risk, right?
Yep, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. The profile
Always.
may change over years.
Yeah.
You know?
And I said it's evolving. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that, like I said, also we encourage the previous winner to join
Yeah.
the competition again, the award again, for us to assess again, because that's
Yeah.
where exactly we will see that,
Do a re-audit. Yeah.
correct, is there a change in the mechanism, change of composition of people, change of usage, and therefore impacting how you manage the place.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Your poll?
Oh yeah, we had two slides. I put up two slides. One was the falling ceiling. You can see here results quite as I expected. You see the first one clearly points to workmanship, but in reality, the material that has been used for those ceiling really is not up to the required situation, and also the design. Because a lot of ceilings in Malaysia, sadly, are not designed to engineering standards, let alone a ceiling that is exposed to the external weather and so forth. So in this case here, it's clearly a situation where the design is lacking. They lacks the materials are incorrect. So workmanship can only do so much. Yeah.
Sorry, for the benefit of the audience, they don't have the slide. I think 27% for categorized design.
Oh, they don't have these results.
Yes,
Is it?
57 categorized
post
workmanship
this?
and 16 maintenance. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
Is it posted now?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Yep, it is.
The other one would be the messy wires. Now here you can see everybody is quite even. So in this instance here, it's a fairly old building. So clearly it's a situation of maintenance that's resulting in bad workmanship over the decades. This is like a 30, 40-year-old building. So primarily, this is how we do work in Malaysia. Subcontractors go in, an expert goes in, and everybody is
Yeah.
free to go and do whatever he wants. So there's
That's my pet peeve, actually. You put in extra aircon, then you just run the exposed wires everywhere.
Yeah.
A bit of thought could conceal it in the ceiling and bring it down somewhere else.
Yeah, and there's no as-built drawings. There's no
Yeah.
so whereas the older cables are not cut off, so everything is just piling one on top of the other. So interesting food for thought about how we really like to see buildings that are older how bad it can actually get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, my vote would go to like all three. It shouldn't be a single answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it comes back to, I think, what Chris mentioned, is ownership. You know,
Yep.
if I feel like this public space belongs to me, I'm going to expect it to look as good as what's inside my strata.
And in the process, you are actually enhancing the value of the building,
Yes.
i.e., your investment
And
at the
therefore-
end of the day.
Of course.
Right, yeah. Let's just go around. Wish list. We cannot live without our wish list, right? Yeah. Okay, maybe starting with Chris, right? Same question. What would be in your wish list? Three items for a healthy and world-class and sustainable strata commercial development in Malaysia.
I think wish list 3, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
3.
So number 1, I think it's important not to get it to be too complicated. Simplify it, if you can, right? Don't put multiple. Although we want it to be integrated and whatnot, but keep it simple. And the integration doesn't mean that it's A to Z. I would say that for all intent and purposes, it should be what matters, rather than just integrate for the sake of integrating. All right, that's important, right?
It must be purposeful.
It must
Are we
be
talking about that?
useful for the user. User is important. You must
Okay.
think about your user. It must be useful for the user.
Okay.
So I think it's important to think like that.
Okay.
That's the first thing. And to have a best manager, I think it's also important to think about the level of service that you want in front of service standard and whatnot. So my wish list is that there must be a user manual, if you can, right, to see how to do it. In fact, a program to track all the common properties maintenance schedule. Right, that's important so that you know that, in this AGM, the 5th AGM of the MC, one of the items you must consider is repainting of the building, for example. For example.
So
things
that
like
there's follow through?
Correct, and then because a lot of owners, they don't know what it is. For example, then we probably have to fix the agenda and say, okay, this is the 5th AGM, this is what you need to do, the 10th AGM you need to do, and then which AGM you need to do the whatever. So they know, there is a timeline, they know exactly what and which year to do and do what. And this could be easily planned by the developer who build it and who get all the supplies and whatnot. At least then they would have a guideline, because once the management corporation is formed, for example, the developer is out, right? They no longer have any bearing into it, but yet you're landed with whatever is there. All right? So I think it's important. That's the second one. And third one, obviously, I think, is to be more transparent in relation to that. For example, don't shield the information. Your notice board is there for a reason, right? Don't look for lost dog, lost item, lost and found only. For example, whatever useful must be there and must be shared from time to time between the management and the owners. I think they need to understand that they are part of one big family and ownership is common.
Communication.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Anthony?
3, 3 wish lists.
You
No,
want?
just one.
No. Three.
Yeah, he's
three.
taken 3 already. So,
No,
yeah.
three.
I put on the hat as my profession as an architect first.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. And having seen a lot of these properties, what I found is that the designs often try to outbid each other. And as a result of that, I see that there are a lot of frivolous features in the designs that we do. And parts fall off, and you can't get to it. And sometimes the design is so unique that only one particular person knows what was built. So, so as a result of that, you find that the building becomes very difficult to understand and manage and maintain. So I think this, and everything else follow with this design. That means the air conditioning have to fit it, the signage have to work around it. So I think the DNA of buildings in Malaysia need to be simplified. It needs to be more effective as far as its longevity and its standardization is concerned. So that's my big wish list. Because from there, I think everything else will cascade into place. Yeah. And another wish list would be, I concur with Chris, would be transparency. But what transparent on what? I think for me, the transparency is really in how you conceal services. you know, when you put all the building, often we like to, somehow or other, this part of the world, we like to hide all our services. We like to put the wires in the wall. We like to put pipes in walls and things like that. And these things all have lifespan. So I think it's time for us to be able to say, look, can we change this? Can we change to a mindset of a maintainable culture? That it's okay to have exposed cables. It's okay to have those things. And it's not ugly, you know. Today, you know, I think a lot of people like to conceal rainwater downpipes because somehow or other it looks ugly. But, you know, it's so difficult to go and fix it if you hide it somewhere, you know, yeah. So I think that would be the other wish list. And finally, I think designing it with the end in mind, that, again, I share with him about the user. When we design commercial buildings, often we design a generic commercial space. And we think that's the way they're going to operate the building. We think that's the way they're going to use it. When we do hotels and we do certain types of buildings, the operator is there and he's going to tell you, I want this, I don't want this, because I'm the expert in running and managing this building. So I think that interface needs to come in, that the people that sits around the table and put and weigh in, they need to bring in the property managers in, they need to bring the techie guys in, not just the design guys. 5 years, they are gone and they leave this legacy behind. Sometimes they get it right. Most of the time, somebody else has to pick up the issues.
It'll be very expensive, right, at that point of time.
You can't, yeah.
Yep,
yeah.
yep, yep. Thank you. Last but definitely not least, NK.
Yeah. Only three?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll stick
Carry
to,
on,
I'll
carry
stick
on.
to three because you could be here forever. Money, ownership, and a holistic long-term view. So money talks. I think we need to encourage management corporations to think of healthy budgets. And so it doesn't make sense. Typically what happens is we have one service charge fee that we fix for a few years, and when we can't handle it, we start paring down services, and when we can't deal with that, then we jack it up. And the increase could be shocking to some. Wow, why did you increase by 20, 30, 50%? Better if they benchmark against CPI. So every year, and actually, we all know CPI is not really real, so we need to benchmark higher, exceed that so that both the service charges collection is healthy as well as sinking fund. It's continually reinvesting in the project to stay current and competitive. So money is one. Secondly, ownership. I think Chris mentioned it earlier. Have everyone come to the AGM so that they can choose the right people to represent them on the management corporation. And if not, they are only themselves to blame. And if not, there have been situations as well where the wrong people get on the MC and they do some, let's say, they
Not so savory.
Not so savory situation. I mean, I've heard, you know, MECC investigating some individuals in MCs for certain
Unsavory things.
unsavory things. Thank you. So that's ownership. I think the more we get involved, and they're all related. The final one is a holistic and long-term view. Long-term is like, it's not just what I want this year, but you know, how's this project going to be 5, 10 years from now? And holistic is, I don't use a swimming pool, so I don't want to pay for maintenance or upgrading. You know, some pools may have old tiles. We want to improve it. The classic one, and this is one takeaway I would give the audience for those of you who stay in projects like that. Tennis court. Reality is, I'm guessing less than 5% play on the tennis court. In a very upmarket development, they might use artificial grass. Again, the reality is 10 years from now, you have to change that. When the budget comes up, hard surface court, artificial court, wow, it's 50%, 100% more. Let's go with hard surface because I'm not a tennis player. I'm one of the 90%. There's no way that 10% is going to push it through. But it impacts the value of the overall project. So again, a holistic view, I think, would help maintain the value. And that's been what our observation and findings are, looking at the best managed from 10 years and beyond. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Just one last question for you, NK. You know, this is for you as a president of REDA.
Oh.
Yeah.
Drum roll, please.
How important do you see property management attributes, quality property management attributes, in buildings? Is it something that REDA is encouraging, pushing, advocating to your members?
Very important. In a way, actually, property management as a whole, of course, needs to be more professionalized. And there are quite a few of these companies out there. But I think that the biggest driver and change will be in the mindset, as Chris mentioned earlier, of the individuals who stay there. That they expect a high standard, which also means they're prepared to pay more to the management company. Now, this doesn't impact developers, but if they paid more, they would get the service. In Singapore, developers are not involved in property management. The day the keys are handed over, it's already understood that a provisional body will meet, and they will assess, or residents will meet, and they will assess who they want as the property manager from day one. So I think the developers don't have property management arms. In Malaysia, because this is still not as mature, developers feel like to protect the value of their property, they have to handhold for a year or two before they hand over. So again, REDA, we're all about delivery of quality, affordable homes in a timely manner for the benefit of the rakyat. Property management is just one of those, but it's a little bit out of our hands because that is beyond handover of keys. Yeah.
So would I be wrong to say that moving forward, we can look forward to new buildings that are built with the end in mind? Is that going to happen?
That's everyone's wish list, I think. Okay. For that to happen, we have to have a very open, somewhat freely regulated industry so that innovation can happen, but within the guidelines. If there's too much regulation, then in a way, the end consumer suffers as well. Yeah.
Okay. Any last words, gentlemen?
I think we've had quite a bit of words this morning already.
Chris, any advice or anything?
I just want to build on the thing that built with the end in mind. At the end of the day, is actually where is the end? I think it's important. The end is like, for example, is it on the day where you hand over the key to the owners, or after that? I think that's important because even I would say that buy with the end in mind. How about that? I turn it around by saying that, because there's only so much the developer can do. I can plan the best frame for you, but how do you actually, just like the forefather that founded this country, for example, I've said this is how the whole day, the resources is right there, the framework is like that, but how you're going to manage it moving forward, how you're going to reorganize it and whatnot, is then belong to the owners who subsequently form the MC of the Strata property development, for example, in relation that is for them to drive the direction. Hence, I mean, one of the thing that I'm looking forward when I do the judging for the award, for example, really is to surprise me that you have managed to even maximize the design that was initially conceptualized for you, and it becomes something else more valuable. And it's up to the imagination of the owner. I think that's more important. Hence mindset, hence ownership.
Yep. Anything else, gentlemen?
Well, can I get one in here?
Sure.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about local elections, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of the people I meet in the properties I inspect are making a lot of noise about how their properties are in such a bad state, and we have to go in there and have a look at it. And the question I always ask them, do you attend meetings? And they say no. So they're not involved with it. And I said, did you attend the AGM and find out who's running the place? And they didn't go in to do the vote. So I think the fact that you buy into a strata property is a fact, right? I think you said this. This is not going away.
No.
Strata is here to stay.
Yep.
So unless of course you want to stay a little bit further, or you can buy a terrace house or whatever, but strata is here to stay. Whether you're going to buy a commercial property or you're going to buy a residential property is here to stay, and the high density mixed strata is also here to stay. Like it or not, once you you sign on the dotted line. I like what he says. It's for life. You got to get involved. You can't let others dictate your destiny, and then you start complaining at the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the title. So maybe a fourth wish list. I mean, the title is Buying Ill-Designed Strata Commercial Property. Let's flip it around and say Buying Well-Designed Strata Commercial Property. My wish list is for the audience today to actually think like the four of us when they go and look at the property, so that they, again, not just look at the exterior or interior of the car, but they look under the hood. They understand where this property is in terms of its maintenance life cycle. And if they all did that and were all discerning, that would also encourage developers to raise their bar.
Sure.
Yeah.
Understand. Yes, a really good point. Because we are coming back to the objective, of this award. Why are we doing this award? It's to raise the bar, to create awareness, so that best-in-class property management practices is something that is like, eating rojak, eating whatever. Yeah, everybody knows, right? Yeah. So yes, there you are, ladies and gentlemen. You have the opportunity to tap on the insights of these gentlemen, on what is a good building, what is a not so good building, and what is it that you need to do and you must do, as a responsible owner, resident of a project, right? And yes, we hope that whatever that you have garnered today will be useful in your property hunt, be it a new building or be it a property in the secondary market, right? Yes, and yes, the submission for this year's Best Managed Property, awards is open, and do take a look, and we hope that is something that augurs well for you and your investment. Gentlemen, Chris, Anthony, and Kay, thank you very much for your time. And yes, do come back tomorrow. We have another session tomorrow. We'll be talking about the different things, equally interesting and impactful. On that note, thank you again, and bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the highly informative and productive morning we had for the Edge Malaysia Property Management Virtual Talk. We express our sincere appreciation to our esteemed panel of speakers, Datuk Tong, Chris, Anthony, and of course, Ms. Au Fung Yee. The special pullout of the Edge Malaysia Property Management Virtual Talk 2024 will be published in the February 5th issue of the Edge Malaysia. But as they mentioned, please come back tomorrow. We have another session, going to be another interesting one full of insights. On behalf of the Edge, thank you very much for spending your time virtually with us this morning. And for those who are asking about those awards that everybody's mentioned, and you have actually questions for that, please email to bmspa@bizedge.com. Have a great Friday, everyone, and see you tomorrow.